Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Agyantimirandasya Vyanandana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guru Namaha. Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukham karoti vachanam pangam namyate gire yatripatama bande Shri Gurudinataranam Paramanandam Madhavam.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Seems like group 1 is not ready, so there is a request to start from group 2 and group 1 will do at the end.
Oh.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, I'm ready for group 1.
Oh, very good.
You are okay, great. Thank you.
My volume was low, so I couldn't. Hare Krishna, devotees, Dandavat Pranam, Jai Srila Prabhupada. Chapter 15, text 1 to 5, banyan tree and the detachment. Verse 1 explained how the material world can be compared to an upside down banyan tree. Just as a banyan tree is very complicated, in the same way, this material world is very, very complicated. A banyan tree has no end, and the misguided soul who perform fruitive activities travel all around the tree on the branches. These branches represent the planetary system all over the material universe. The fruit on the trees are the result of the entity's activities. No one can be liberated from the material world if they are attached to this tree. So, in order to detach oneself from this tree, one must fulfill the purpose of Vedas, which is to ultimate understand Krishna. One must cut down the banyan tree of the material world with the acts of detachment, which is sharpened by the determination. This tree is upside down because it reflection of the spiritual world. The material world is temporary, but the spiritual world is real. So the spiritual world is the real banyan tree, with the roots down and the branches up. Desire is what separates from spiritual world and the material reflection. Text 2 explain the banyan tree, which represent the material world, is separated into the three modes of material nature. They are all differently nourished. From example, the one part of tree with the mode of ignorance would have ignorant material entities. The tree also has the sense object, the leaves, the senses, and the twigs. The tree roots are the effect of sense enjoyment. And the main roots starts at the Brahmaloka and other roots starts at the different planetary systems. Verse 3 and 4 explain this banyan tree of the material world has no end. So to those who are entangled in it, one must find the root cause of everything, which is Supreme Personality of Godhead. One can do this by having associates with the Krishna conscious devotees and surrender unto the Lord. In this way, one can become detached from the material world and go back to Godhead. Text 5. In order to become detached from this material world, one must fully surrender to Supreme Lord. This word clearly describes how one can be fully surrendered. First, one must not have pride. All the ignorant souls think themselves to be Lord of everything because they don't know that Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One must also not expect any honor in this world, material world. Those who are detached from the pride and honor become free from the false association which bind us to the material world. After this, one must become experienced in the spiritual knowledge. So when one does this, they can surrender to Lord and can eternally go home back to Godhead. Hari Bol. That's all, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Samita Mataji. Thank you so much. Nice summation. Okay, let's go to group 2.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. I'll be representing group 2. So we got the verses 6 to 11, which explains the transmigration of the soul of the soul from one body to another body. So here the verse 6 starts with Prabhupada's explanation, like how Goloka Vrindavan is self-illuminated and it doesn't receive the light from any other source, because the Supreme Sabod Goloka Vrindavan is the ultimate source of all energies, because Krishna is Samam Bonam, or absolute truth. And the light and energies which many universal planets, Vaikunthas, are getting is actually absorbed from Goloka Vrindavan. And further, Prabhupada explains that those who reach Goloka Vrindavan will never return to material world. So one should be always be captivated by this information. And he should desire to transfer himself to the Supreme Sabod from the dark material world. Further, he explains the identity of living entity, that he is the part and parcel of Krishna and he is the eternal servitor of the Supreme. Lord manifests and expands himself in innumerable expansions. First is like primary is Vishnu Tattva, which is personal expansions, and secondary is living entities. Now here, every individual has individuality and minute of independence. A minute of independence plays a very significant role. By proper use of the minute of independence, he is always liberated from material contamination and is engaged in the transcendental service of the Lord. But if he misuses the minute of independence, he is entangled in the modes of material nature and the cycle of birth and death. Here the word karshati is like struggling, explains how a conditioned soul bound by false ego is completely controlled and driven by the mind. Mind, when it is in the mode of goodness, his activities are good. Mode of passion, his activities are troublesome. And mode of ignorance, he travels in lower species of life. All the fragmental portions of the Lord are always eternal. So when fragmental portions are liberated, they revive the spiritual body in the spiritual planet and they get the association of Krishna. The living entity is described as the controller. Your living entity is described as Ishvara. That means the controller of his body. Your minute of independence is there at the time of death, and the consciousness is created at the time of death will carry him on to the next type of the body. The individual soul is transmigrated from one body to another body according to the present and past activities. If his consciousness at the time of death is fixed in cat, he becomes cat. Fixed in godly qualities, he becomes demigod. And if he is fixed in Krishna consciousness, he reaches Krishna Loka. The spirit soul's consciousness is originally pure, but when contacted with the material qualities, it is contaminated. And this has to be, we have to get this knowledge. And so by getting knowledge from Bhagavad Gita under a bona fide spiritual master, one understands the spell of material nature and understands the importance of Krishna consciousness. And taking up Krishna consciousness, one can reach perfectly, seriously, if one takes Krishna consciousness, one can definitely reach Krishna Loka. So that's it, Prabhuji.
Thank you very much. Nice summation. Okay, let's move on to group 3.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I'm representing group 3. So this section talks about Krishna being the maintainer. So it starts with saying that Krishna is the source of everything. He's the splendor of the sun, he's the splendor of the moon, he's the splendor of fire, and he's the splendor of electricity. And the moonshine that nourishes the vegetables. we cannot live without sun, moon, or fire. That's the point that is being made here. And planets are floating in the air by the energy of the Lord, and the plenary portion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead enters as Paramatma into planets, living entities, atoms. Due to this, everything is appropriately manifesting. So here Prabhupada gives an example. If a person holds the sand in his hand, it stays there. But when he throws into the air, the sand particles will tend to fall down to the earth. But but the but because of the existence, or because of the eternal existence of the Supreme Personality, these planets, which are almost like a sand particles, they are floating in the universe, or floating in the space. And again, yeah, emphasis is given that everything is manifested, or everything has been maintained by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then he says, and Krishna says, I'm the fire that digests the food, regulated fire being the hunger. So basically it says, Prabhupada gives a reference of Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad, which confirms this point in 5.9.1, that he is the fire in the stomach that digests the food. So the living entity is not independent in eating process also. So basically, only when the fire is there in the stomach, the living entity is able to feel the hunger, and he's able to eat, and he's able to maintain. So in that sense also, Krishna is kind of the maintainer there. And he also explains that Krishna is the one who in the form of fire digests all kinds of food, which is anything that is drunk, anything that is chewed, or anything that is licked, or anything that is sucked. All kinds of foods are being digested by the fire, which is a form of Krishna. So basically he's saying that he's the digestive force of all of them. Then Prabhupada explains that Paramatma is in everyone's heart, and all the activities are initiated by him. He is the incarnation of Vedas, and Vedas give the right direction. He is the supplier of the food, and also the digester of the food. And he is the witness of all the activities. He is the giver of the knowledge. He is in the form of Vedas. Living entities forget as soon as they quit the body, but the Lord gives the intelligence to start the activities wherever he has left. We ourselves, we have heard, and we have from various senior devotees and sadhus, that our spiritual life begins from where we stopped in the previous life. So this is a very good example to say that Krishna gives that intelligence as to start our life, either spiritual or the material life, from where we have stopped in the previous life. That intelligence also is provided by Krishna. And if the living entity is interested, then the Lord gives the knowledge of Vedas too. So we see that some white body devotees, all of a sudden they sort of come across someone and read a book or something like that, and they become very curious, and Krishna immediately provides that intelligence. Krishna provides that the association that is needed for the devotee, where they can progress further in their life, in the spiritual life. So the Vedic literatures includes the four Vedas, Vedanta Sutras, Upanishads, Puranas, and all of these are glorifying the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the purpose of the Vedas is to understand the purpose of the Vedas is understanding of the Vedas, and the goal of the Vedas, and it is very clear. And what is the goal of the Vedas? Is to attain the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. Nice analysis. Very good. Okay, moving on to the last group, group 4.
Hi, group 4 is presenting summary of Vedanta Sutra, verses 16 to 20. Our group is presenting summary of one of our group members, Rajmukhi Mataji, is the compiler of this narration, and she's in India, so the spokesman for her. Krishna, in his incarnation as Vasudeva, compiled Vedanta Sutra, and these verses are presenting the summary in this chapter for Vedanta Sutra. Text 16, 17, and 18 Ashok, are called Tri Shloki Gita, where he gives the Sambandha Jnana, which involves the knowledge of our relationship with Krishna. There are two kinds of living entities, fallible and infallible. Devotees who are divided from the true nature in material world, though they come under the category of fallible, which is everybody in this material world is considered fallible, which is Jiva Bhuta, and who wants to enjoy and to be independent are in this group. The second category is infallible, who doesn't deviate from the true nature and who are in oneness with the Lord. It's called Brahma Bhuta, and they are in the spiritual world. 1 second, devotees. So Krishna says that all living entities are my part and parcel, but they are struggling with the six senses, out of which the leading one is the mind. The material body goes through six kinds of changes, which is birth, growth, duration or existence, reproduction, dwindling, vanquishing, or death. In spiritual world, although the body is not made of matter, and thus there's no changes, here the body is Sat, eternal, Chit, full of knowledge, and Anand, which is full of bliss. There is no birth, death, old age, or disease. It is full of bliss, no suffering, and is in sync with Lord. This is what gives us the understanding of our position in material world relative to the spiritual world, which is the Sambandha Jnana. Text 18, moving on, the Lord is saying that he's transcendental to both the fallible and infallible. Living entities in material and spiritual world cannot be equal to Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even if one becomes liberated, he can never surpass the Lord. Krishna says he is the greatest and no one can become equal to him. He is celebrated both in this world and in the Vedas as Supreme Person. We are the servant and Lord is the master and maintainer of this world. That is our relationship. We should never think of the Lord as being one of us. If someone does claim to be a God, then it should be stated in Vedic scriptures for it to be considered valid. Text 19 is the Abhidaya part, the process, where one who understands the process of Sambandha Jnana, which is the relationship between the Supreme Personality of God and a living entity, through the Vedic scriptures is called a Sarvavit, the knower of everything. Therefore, he performs pure devotional service, and that will make him always be willing to serve Krishna. Krishna is the Supreme Master, the cause of all causes, the source of everything, the maintainer and the destroyer. Servant can never be equal to master. One who is engaged in Bhakti Yoga need not do any other yoga process. The Lord will reveal everything necessary for devotional service. Abhidaya, the process, is a devotional service. So, which we need to follow after understanding our relationship to Krishna. So first, understanding the relationship, second is following the process of devotional service. Text 20, which is Prayojana, the ultimate goal. Krishna says those who understand the confidential part, which is the Sambandha and Abhidaya, will attain Prayojana, the ultimate goal. We are filled with contamination and bound to the modes of material nature. We act in goodness, passion, and ignorance. In age of Kali, mostly we are in ignorance and passion, which act as obstacles preventing us from going back to Godhead. Thus, we are not able to get out of the cycle of birth and death. That is our bondage. One has to be free from all sinful reactions and contamination to understand Krishna. One has to overcome the weakness of the heart, which is the tendency to lord over material nature and attachment to material possessions. Engaging in devotional service to the Lord under guidance of a spiritual master, one can become purified and intelligent and spiritually intelligent. There is no doubt of it. Finally, knowing all this, one surrenders and becomes one with Lord in desire and service. That is the yoga of Supreme Person. Hare Krishna.
Jai, thank you. Very, very nicely done and fair amount of technical analysis. Good. So, does anybody have questions for any of the other groups? Not necessarily the presenter. I don't want to put the presenter on the spot just because they volunteered. But anything that you heard that struck a chord.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. That was Prabhu, I think reference to one of the point, like when we are in the devotional service, if we have a desire, inquisitiveness or desire, Krishna will make arrangements to get to him, right? So I think something happened yesterday. Bhakti Sundar Gosai Maharaj was in the town in Phoenix, so he went for a morning walk with a couple of devotees. So then there was some American lady was hiding behind the bush first time, and then when Maharaj went for a second time, she was still not comfortable, and she was like then when they were leaving, and she came to the car and told that when other devotee was asking, she wanted to talk. She said like she has been dreaming something or something happening in her life. She got somebody in the dream like in a bluish form and told her that tomorrow somebody like sannyasi dress will be coming in the morning walk. So that's exactly happened. So when it happened, she was very, so it means, I think Krishna is there, and it's our faith is, sometimes I feel like, being devotees also, we may not have the same faith, and sometimes we hear those, but we are fortunate to see that it happened yesterday in the close circle.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. And I think incidents like that, they reinforce our faith in the philosophy. So we study so much philosophy, but ultimately when we see it in action, that's when real strong faith takes root.
And Maharaj gave her Hare Krishna Mahamantra and asked her to sing a couple of times. So meaning when we hear in this chapter, for the spiritual, right, anything we do spiritual, it doesn't go waste. In life after life, we start from the same place. Meaning whatever life she has so far, suddenly, she started maybe her spiritual life where she left in the previous, birth or whatever pious activity she has done. So.
Right. Thank you for sharing, Prabhu. So I think the groups did an excellent job presenting the what in the chapter, that what is being said. And it also helps to step back and question the why. That why is Krishna saying this? Why is this relevant over here? Right, so that kind of analysis is not only does it reveal additional tattvas, but it also demonstrates the mastery of Krishna and how he is building theme by theme by theme. So, can somebody help the group understand that at this point, why does Krishna speak about the Purushottam Yoga? Why does he speak about the inverted banyan tree? Yes, Mataji? Naradi Mataji?
It's because in the last chapter he talked about the three modes of material nature, and this is the way, because it's like so entangled over the million lifetimes, and to get out of it, he's telling the way. So, and showing how entangled and how huge it is, and the way to get out of it is by the knowledge of the detachment and the renunciation. That's why, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Mataji. Very nice. Bhakti Vinod Prabhu?
Similar thing, because in the last chapter 14.27, Krishna said you can transcend the material modes of nature by bhakti. So this is a continuation of that, saying how do we actually through knowledge and detachment we can get rid of the material, transcend the modes of material nature.
Okay. So the answer is correct. However, it is incomplete. And it's fine because Krishna himself builds upon it. So when Krishna in the previous chapter, as Naradi Mataji pointed, I'm sorry, Ranga Mataji, you have some thoughts?
Yes, Prabhuji, it's like the tree doesn't have the differentiation between the main root and the trunks. It's all looks the same. We cannot differentiate. So similarly, when we come to the material world, we don't have, we can't find out when we came and all. So we have to get out of this web. That's my thought. I think that's it.
Yes, which is correct. Krishna introduces a new topic over here. The first topic was summarized accurately, that when Krishna finished the last chapter, the Mamchavidacharena Bhakti Yogena Sevata, right? He said the way to transcend this modes of material nature is bhakti. So Arjun could have asked, if that is the way, then why doesn't everybody take to bhakti? Krishna said, because it's difficult. And then he gives the metaphor of the banyan tree and how the various paths, they represent various aspects of material existence. And the tree is so complicated that it is impossible to get out of it. Yeah, so the point that Krishna is making, that you can never figure out the material world. Not even Lord Brahma is able to figure it out. In the Narad Sanataran Upanishad, the Upanishad that basically ratifies our mantra, Narad Muni goes to Brahma and says, in this age of Kali, it's a very small Upanishad, it just has 3 verses. And Narad Muni goes to Brahma and says, in this age of Kali, people will be all that qualities, quarrelsome, short-lived, etc. What is the hope for their liberation? And then Brahma, in the Upanishad, that mantra is there. He said, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Iti Shodakam Namanam, Kali Kalantram Nashanam, Nat Parutropaya Sarva Vedeshu Drishtatu. Right? So he says, this 16 word Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, Kali Kalantaram Nashanam, will destroy all the misfortunes in the age of Kali. And then he says, Nat Paratropaya Sarve Deshe Drishyatu, that Brahma came to this conclusion after exhaustively reading the scriptures. The Acharyas say Brahma had to read the entire scriptures 3 times. The first time when he read, he came to the conclusion that karma is the way. Second time he read, he came to the conclusion jnana is the way. Only when he read it 3rd time, then he came to the conclusion that iti shodashkam namanam kali kalantaram nashanam. Right? So this material world is very complicated, and Krishna wants us to embrace that notion that don't try to manipulate the material world, because you will invariably get lost. Like nobody knows where the roots are, the trees are, the branches are the jivas. So all that he explains to indicate the extraordinary complexity of the material world. So what is the solution? He says, don't worry about figuring out the material world. Worry about getting out of the material world. And the way to do that is through detachment. Because the jiva is bound by the three ropes of material nature. When the person practices material detachment, then they're freed from the material world. So it's like there's a prisoner in a prison house. He may be saying that the way for me to get free is to destroy this prison house. Or the way for me to get free is to find a secret passage. Maybe there is a tunnel. Maybe there is some pathway that I can secretly, nobody knows about, I can take it. Doesn't happen. How can the prisoner exit the prison house? By extinguishing the condition for which he is imprisoned. He does not destroy the prison house, but he terminates the sentence that is put him in the prison house. That's the first piece of information that Krishna wants to give us. But he says that is not enough. Because you exit the material world, then where are you? Right? You have nothing. So he says accompanying this material detachment should be spiritual attachment. The two should go hand in hand. In fact, Prabhupada says of the two, the second is most important. Even if one doesn't practice material detachment, by spiritual attachment, automatically it comes. But material detachment without spiritual attachment is useless. So this is the key message in this chapter, that one should practice material detachment along with spiritual attachment. So this is just a description of the banyan tree. I think the group, they explained it nicely. It's just a graphic. Okay, so we talked about that. And then he says, cut down this tree with the axe of detachment, right? Because it is attachment that is binding us to the material world. So this whole notion of equanimity, so now we are beginning to understand why is Krishna over and over emphasizing the importance of being equipoised, undisturbed. Right? So when we apply this in the paradigm of the banyan tree, then one can move to the higher and lower branches of the tree by pious and impious activities, but nevertheless, the person is within the banyan tree. However, if the person is detached, so the condition under which the person is imprisoned is attachment. The explanation that is given, that in the material world, happiness is only experienced in the context of misery. So take an example, that if a person has eaten and fully satiated, and you give the person a plate of food, they'll say no. However, if the same person is hungry and you give the plate of food, he'll be very happy. Thank you so much. Same plate of food, the only difference is that in the second case, the person was feeling misery. So the elevation of misery is constituted as happiness. Happiness does not have its own independent existence. It is only experienced in the context of the presence or absence of distress. So Krishna calls the tree Ashwatha. So Ashwatha means banyan, and Ashwatha also means non-permanent. And then he says it's upside down, which, as was explained, that it is a reflection. Now, can anybody tell me that what is the surface on which this banyan tree is being reflected? Yes, Rajiv Shyam Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Is it desires?
It is, yes, material desires. So it is on the surface of material desires, which is how we can now understand that how can this tree stop existing for us? Because it is existing on the surface of material desires. The material desires are based on duality. When those cease, then the cause of the reflection ceases, and then automatically our entanglement is gone. So let's speak a little bit about material detachment. So what in the different stages of bhakti, what is the stage that denotes material detachment, the onset of material detachment, right? So Rupa Goswami talks about the 8 stages of bhakti, like Shraddha, Sadhu Sangha, Bhajan, etc. Which stage here is the one that gives us material detachment? Okay, somebody else? I think both these devotees have answered. Okay, Naradi Mataji has also answered. Somebody else? Just trying to make sure that we have equal participation. I know some of you are shy. Okay, Rajiv Shyam Prabhu.
Is it anartha nivritti Prabhu?
Very good. It's anartha nivritti. So if we analyze the word, the root word is artha. Artha means useful. Anartha means no value, useless. Now, vritti means inclination, and nivritti means no inclination. So what is anartha nivritti? No inclination towards that which is of no value. Right? So we see a double negation. A double negation is considered to be more emphatic. Right? Now, anartha nivritti in itself is not it's a means to an end. It's not an end in itself, which is why we see the next stage, which is called artha pravritti. That artha is useful and pravritti is strong inclination. Like Krishna will say this towards the end of the chapter. So anartha nivritti should be accompanied by artha pravritti, right? The two should go hand in hand. So now Arjun may ask that Krishna, you have explained to me that what I need to do. I need to cut down this T, and of course, it's a metaphor. I need to develop detachment. But detachment is the result of something, right? So what is it that I need to practice? Arjun doesn't ask this question. Vishnu Chakravarti many times interpolates the conversation. So what is it that I need to practice in order to develop this material detachment, right? Naradi Mataji, you want to share?
Yeah, is it attachment to Krishna which helps in detachment from material desires?
Okay. Okay. Any other thoughts? Praveen, Prabhu?
Prabhu, is it a bhajan kriya?
Not really. Not really. So in the 5th verse, Krishna talks about the qualities that helps one develop material detachment, free from false prestige, illusion, and false association, who understands the eternal, who is done with material lust, freed from the dualities of happiness and distress, and who unbewildered know how to surrender unto the Supreme Person. So we see that in here, Krishna is co-mingling material and spiritual endeavors. Right. So he could have simply said, as Narada Mataji was saying, that just surrender to the personality of Godhead. Right? But he doesn't say that. He also talks about this material quality of equanimity, the free from false prestige, illusion. So this is a very practical verse for devotees like us who are practicing. That while we practice bhakti, we should also cultivate our material qualities that are conducive to detachment, like free from false prestige, illusion, and false. Now, Prabhupada says, like Nadi Mataji said, that bhakti in itself will give everything. But what if bhakti is not, if the person, because of these, is not able to practice bhakti? It becomes a catch-22. Right? So you need to practice bhakti to eliminate these qualities. And because of these qualities, you're not able to practice bhakti. So Krishna says that you do both. While you're practicing detachment, you also practice your spiritual attachment. Now, when Krishna is speaking about spiritual attachment, can anybody tell me what is it that he is placing towards Arjuna as a tangible goal? Bhakti Prabhu?
Not sure, Prabhu. Is it attaining the spiritual world?
Very good. Right. So Krishna is very, very practical. When he's speaking philosophy, he always makes it a point to quantify it. So he's not just saying that practice spiritual attachment. What spiritual attachment? Right. So in the 6th verse, Krishna talks about his own destination. Same point was made in the 8th chapter, 20th verse. So Krishna is now giving a specific goal. So now you look at from the perspective of Arjuna and us. Krishna has put 2 possible destinations for us. The material world as the reflection of the banyan tree, and the spiritual world. He compares the qualities of both of them. He gives the what one needs to do to go from one to another. So that is the beauty of Bhagavad Gita. It is the highest philosophy that is presented in the most practiced way. Now one can actually take it and begin to practice. Now, Arjuna might say that, Krishna, this is your spiritual world, and I can understand you're happy. I'm happy over here. So sometimes when you're preaching, people say that. Like you say, this material world is dukhaliyam ashashvatam. And he says, no, not really, I'm happy. I have good money, I have good family, etc. So why? And it's not that some of them are, but why are they not attracted to the spiritual world? So Krishna speaks a very key verse in this chapter. And bonus points for anybody who can. It's one of Prabhupada's often repeated verse. Why should the jiva aspire to go into the spiritual world? Yes, Chaitanya Prabhu.
Eternal happiness or bliss.
Yes, I was looking for the verse. The point you're saying is absolutely right. There's a verse that presents this tattva. Okay, so this is Mame Vamsha Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana Manashashtani Indrayani Prakratistani Karshati. Right. So why should the jiva aspire to return to Krishna? Because Krishna says that you are like me, Mame Vamsha Jiva Loke. Right? Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. And he says you are eternal fragmental parts, because he doesn't want Mayavadis to come in and start saying, Krishna says that jiva is there and now there. So he says Jiva Bhuta Sanatana, that you are eternally a fragmental part. So that's why you should come to me. Now, why doesn't everybody come? Manashashtani Indrani, Prakratistani Karshati. That because of the conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the six senses. That includes the mind. So now Krishna has systematically shown Arjuna, material world, not the best place, spiritual world, actually destination. It's a constitutional position. So now Arjuna is, okay, Krishna, you convinced me. But how do I start developing attachment to you? Now, material detachment, Arjuna doesn't ask, right? Because as conditioned souls, we have a lot of experience with the material world, right? We have experience in manipulating the energies. Like when Krishna says, one who is equipoised in happiness and distress, we immediately get it. Right? We don't need a purport on that also. But the point is that if one is aspiring to return to the spiritual world, how does one embark on that path? Ranjita Mataji?
Prabhuji, first of all, we need to get the knowledge, and the knowledge we get is from the bona fide spiritual master. To understand what is the klesha of the material world, and then the process of Krishna consciousness, everything, the proper path should be understood only by the knowledge given by the spiritual master.
Thank you. Almost there. Just one thing that is missing. Anybody else want to give it a try? Okay. So again, if we put on our hat that this conversation is actionable, is philosophy that is actionable, Arjuna is now asking Krishna, how do I develop attachment for you? Now, where is Arjuna? Where are we? In the material world. So what does Krishna say? That see me in the material world. Right? So in verses 8 to 11, Krishna makes this point that I am the sun, the moon, I'm fire, gravitational force, I'm the fire of digestion. So because we all have the direct experiences of these elements, all we have to do is to link it to Krishna. And Krishna is very emphatic about this, right? If you look back into the Bhagavad Gita, beginning from the 7th chapter, Krishna is making this point, right? In the 7th chapter, verses 4 to 12, Krishna makes the same point, that I'm the taste of the water, I'm the light of the sun and the moon. In the 9th chapter, verses 16 to 19, same point, Krishna says. The 10th chapter, that is from 23 verses from 20 to 42, same. How do you see Krishna in the material world. 14th chapter, Krishna says, fourth was Aham Bij Prada Pita, right? He says that I am the cause of the creation of the jiva. And now, in this 15th chapter, from verse 12 to 15, Krishna makes the same point, that you can see me everywhere around. Now, not only can you see me everywhere without, you can also see me within. Right? So this is again another famous verse. Sarvasacham Hrivi Sanavishto Madaskriti Jnanam Aponam Cha Vedesach Sarveram Eva Vedya Vedanta Krid Vedavid Eva Chaham. Right? This is verse 15, which is talking about Krishna's position as the Paramatma. And while Krishna is talking about Paramatma, Krishna also talks about transmigration. So it is the Paramatma that makes transmigration happen. Like sometimes people say, who knows what will happen after death? So might as well enjoy. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 4th canto, in chapter 29, Narad Muni gives a very technical analysis of answering this question. That he said, I can prove, when he's talking to Puranjan, he said, I can prove to you that reincarnation exists. And then he goes through the process. If you're interested, you can read that chapter. Prabhupada has wonderful purports there. But the Paramatma is the one that is giving memory and forgetfulness. Right? So there was the sharing of a lady who just spontaneously took to at least an anga of bhakti. Why? Purvaras, because of prior attachment. Right? There was once a lady who wrote an email to me, and she was sharing that how in 1966 she was a hippie, and she was in New York, basically homeless, living on the streets. And once she was just around with a friend of hers looking for drugs, and the devotees were doing Harinam Sankirtan. So she turned and looked, and she just saw the back of the devotees, and then she heard the ting, ting, ting of Kartara. So she wanted to follow. She said, I got such a strong sense of deja vu that I know this. I have good memories about this. And then she said the friend was basically dissuaded her, and they did not end up going. And now from 66, so she was having this conversation with me almost 30 years later on. And then somehow she had found my email address. And then basically then she was sharing that once from New York, she had moved to Portland, Oregon. And she said, once I was going around, and then I heard the same ting, ting, ting. So this time she said, I followed, and it was coming from a temple. And it took her no time she said, I just asked them millions and millions of questions. The devotees answered, gave her prasadam, gave her Bhagavad Gita. She was trying to read it. She was also in some material difficulty, but she was trying to read it. And then she found somehow my name and email, and she started communicating to me. And initially I was kind of like preaching to her, but then I realized she's actually much more advanced than me. Her realizations were much more deeper. And in no time she took initiation from Ramapat Maharaj, very fixed up. So that is Paramatma. He gives remembrance. Also gives forgetfulness. When does he give forgetfulness? When the jiva says, I have nothing to do with Krishna. And Paramatma complies. So he gives forgetfulness also. And this Smriti Jnanam Apohanam Cha is also the key to transmigration, because it's Narad Muni gives this as a proof that everybody is born with an innate nature. They are not blank slates. If everybody was simply taking starting a new journey, they should be a blank slate. Now they can say, Now they inherit the characteristics of the parents. But then the parents should be a blank slate. Right? If you go further back, if everybody is simply a combination of chemicals, then the nature of chemical reaction is that they are repeatable. You add two chemicals, you'll always get the same result, not different results. But the fact is that even in small children, you see they have different natures. Some are shy, some are obstinate, some are demanding. Where do they get it from? How do they remember? This is my nature. The Paramatma gives that remembrance. So Krishna demonstrates two things in this, that he is present within and without, and he is also the one as the neutral person is controlling transmigration, but also giving the assurance that as for devotees, I'm going to be giving them remembrance of their past bhakti. Like so much assurance that Krishna is given. So then we move on to our, so this is essentially Krishna describing the spiritual world, spiritual from the, based on the Bhagavatam, transcending the modes, summarizing. Okay. So then we come to the last 5 verses, 16 to 20, and these were nicely summarized. That 16 to 18 are known as the Trishloki Gita. So they talk about Sambandha Gyan. Why does Krishna talk about Sambandha Gyan? Because now that he has established the relationship between the Jiva and the Supreme Lord, now that he has established the destination, now he wants to give it a more systematic understanding. Initially, Krishna said that Mame Vamsha Jiva Loka, that you are my part and parcel. I am Sachidananda, you are Sachidananda. But now he is giving more explanation. Why is he giving? Because Krishna is more focused on the Jiva developing spiritual attachment. Right? So he speaks more about it. In Sambandh, there are 3 aspects: Krishna, Jiva, and the nature of the relationship. Right? So verse 16 talks about the Jiva. He says that Akshara and Akshara, they're conditioned and liberated, 2 kinds of Jiva. Then verse 17, he talks about himself, Krishna. He says, but other than that, there is the greatest living personality, the Supreme Soul, the imperishable Lord himself. So sometimes Krishna speaks about the Lord in 3rd person, sometimes he speaks about in 1st person. And even though it's not a rule, but empirically you'll see that when Krishna is talking as Swayam Bhagwan, then he talks in the 1st person. And when he's talking in terms of Paramatma, or he's talking in terms of the Vishnu avatar, he tends to talk in the 3rd person. It's not, you'll find exceptions, but that seems to be Krishna's mode. So Krishna here is talking about the Paramatma, right, who has entered the 3 worlds and is maintaining it. So he has shown who the Jiva is, and he's shown who Krishna is. Then he says that what is the relationship between the 2. So what is the relationship? He says that he's superior to the conditioned Jiva and the liberated Jiva and the Brahman and the Paramatma. Right? So now Krishna has very subtly moved to Swayam Bhagavan. Right? He is basically now pointing to himself as the cause of everything. He is a cause of both the kinds of Jiva, conditioned and liberated. He is a cause. His Akshara also refers to the Brahman, cause of the Brahman, and the Purusha. The Purusha is Paramatma. So as a result of Gyan and Astang, one gets liberation. As a result of Bhakti, one gets Prema. So even Gyan and Astang, they need Bhakti to attain liberation. right? So only that the component is small, but they also are dependent on bhakti to deliver the result. After establishing the relationship, Krishna in 19th verse speaks about Abhidaya. That what does the person do once he understands the relationship? That Krishna is superior, Krishna is great, Krishna is Vibhu, you are Anu. He says that without doubting, he engages himself in full devotional service of me. Same conclusion that Krishna reached at the end of 14th chapter. And what is the result of that? He says that such a person will now attain perfection. He has already defined perfection, right? So there's no ambiguity about it. Perfection is not getting siddhis, perfection is not becoming Indra or Brahma. He's already defined perfection. So now he simply refers to it. That perfection that I have spoken about earlier, which is coming back to me. Okay, so this is the end of the chapter. How are we doing with time? Okay, we don't have time for question answers. So what we will do is for the next week, if we can divide ourselves into 4 groups and cover these chapters or these aspects of the chapter. We'll start with Q&A and then presentation and then summation after that. Okay, I'll send the presentation and Chaitanya Das Prabhu will probably share this group allocation. Okay, is that okay? Sounds good?
Thank you, Prabhu.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay, so we'll end over here. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Ananta koti vaishnavendra ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nidhai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prabhu.